Hey, Marc Millan here. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. I hope you're doing good. And today I want to jump into a topic, kind of like worship leader coaching. I want to pass on just 5 tips for how you can help others engage in worship in your worship services. Now, corporate gatherings can look very different. They can be small groups, right? Sometimes we get the opportunity to lead people in worship, and there might be 2 people, 5 people, 10 people, and other circumstances, it might be more than that. It might be hundreds, it might be a couple of thousand, or maybe even larger than that. So some of these ideas, I think, translate to any size of the corporate gathering. And I want to just pass on what's really been effective for me, what God has been able to show me and teach me. I just want to pass them on to you. So this is almost like a little bit of a worship coaching, consultation, things that I'm always pouring into worship leaders when I'm working with them. So here's 5 tips for how you can lead others in worship. They might seem very, very practical, but that's the point. These are things that you can actually apply and do and be mindful of when you start leading. So let's go over them together. Number 1, always invite people to worship. I like to lean on the aspect of invitation, leading to inspire. The Bible talks a lot about encourage and admonish, and it uses these words of exhortation, which should help a person choose to engage their heart in what's happening in a worship service. I would distinguish it this way. There's a difference between direction and commandment, giving direction or demanding someone to do something. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I have felt very uncomfortable when I'm demanded or commanded to do something. There's something about our nature that just kind of has a little bit of resistance. So I like to frame words and instructional words during worship with the aspect of invitation. For example, here's some very practical tips for number 1. Always invite. Let's lift our hands in worship. Let's put our hands together. Come on, let's lift our hands to the Lord. Let's sing this out together. That's invitational language, where commanding language is more the point of lift your hands, lift your song, lift your praise. To me, there's a difference between how that feels to the person in the room. Now, a person who's been a believer for a very, very long time might not actually feel any difference, but in the context of where I get to lead worship, we have a lot of either new believers or unsaved people who come all the time. So I prefer to coach on always use invitational language, always invite people to participate. And here's the thing we got to remember: worship is a voluntary act of the heart. It's very important. Because if I command somebody to do something, if I command them to sing or clap or to lift their hands, they might do it because of the strength of my communication skills, because of the moment. But if they didn't do it voluntarily, it cannot be received as true worship. So worship is always a voluntary act on our part towards God, and it's a willingness. The Bible talks about a willing heart. So always invite. That's number 1. Number 2, read the room. That's what I want to call it. Read the room. Now, this takes discernment. So some people, I would say, that I've worked with have a stronger gift of discerning than others. But reading the room is as simple as getting to the place where you can see or try to assess what's happening at that moment. Now, we've all experienced this. We've all been to a major sporting event. We've been to the movies. Just trying to think. We've been to parties. We've been to weddings. A wedding is a great example. You're at a wedding and someone gets up to give a speech. And as they start to talk, there's a genuineness to how they're talking. And you can feel the room is connected to that person speaking at that time. Now, you might have been at a wedding where the speech was really, really bad, okay? And what I mean is they start talking, their humor is off, the room is not getting their sense of humor, or they're saying things that seem completely off the cuff, and you can read the room, you can feel that there is a disconnection with what's going on, right? With what the person is saying and what the room is experiencing. This is what I mean by reading the room. So oftentimes, as I start to lead worship and I get into the worship set, I try to pull myself up over what's happening and just try to read. Is the room moving along? Do I see people engaging? Does it seem like they're responding to the songs? Does it seem hard? Are we trying to ask them to sing and maybe they're just not wanting to sing? I'm just trying to read the room so that I can choose what I might want to say or what I might want to encourage. Again, number one is always invite, right? So I might invite them to sing with us and maybe they don't respond right away. I'll read that and we'll go into the worship set a little bit deeper, and then a couple of songs later, I'll try to read it again. I'm not trying to force worship. Like I said, it's voluntary, but it is my responsibility as a leader of worship in corporate gatherings to unify the room towards one purpose, which is to put our hearts and our eyes and our focus on Jesus, right? So I'm trying to unify the room as much as I can, and one of the best ways I can do that is by just simply reading the room to see if they are coming along for the journey or if we still got to do a little bit more work to kind of get them there. So that's number 2, is read the room. Number 3, this is debatable, but this is where I've landed on this. I call it the 80-20 rule. Number 3, I call it the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is this. As a worship leader, as a person who is leading songs of worship, I want to be able to lead the room to sing with me 80% of that song, and then 20% I can deviate from what the melody is or deviate from what they may know the song to be. So here's an example. A classic song like Mighty to Save, okay? People know it, they've sung it for years and years and years. If I go in and I start reinterpreting the melody for the verse and then changing the melody for the chorus and changing the bridge, what tends to happen is that people will choose to listen because they can no longer follow along. They don't know what they're supposed to, what their role is as we're going through the song. Because as the singer, I've decided to be so creative and to go so off the rails on what's normally supposed to be there that they've chosen to like sit it out. Now, if I start to sing the song the way it's written and I start leading them and they join in, and now we are participating together, which I think is the goal of leading worship, is the whole room is worshiping together. I'd like to frame that to say, I want to lead them 80% of the time with whatever the song is. It's just a number. 80-20 is just a marker to say, I want to lead them well so that they're singing with us and that they're following with us because we are leading worship, right? So if they're following me, I want to give them clarity on what their role is to participate and to sing along. And then I want to find the moments where I can add something maybe that makes the song a little bit more mine or makes the song a little bit more special, and I can add something to it vocally that maybe only I could add. And I do this with all of the worship singers that I work with. They have different vocal ranges, different gift sets. So I will say, hey, 80-20 rule, lead. Remember, you are here to lead them in this song. You're not here to just interpret the song however you want it to be. There are moments for that in a service, and sometimes we do a different type of song. Sometimes we actually intentionally change the framework of a song, but it's presentational. People are there to listen. But if the people are to engage and participate, again, which is the goal, then we lead 80% of the time, and 20% of the time we try to add those little, if there's a run, there's something special, something unique about your voice, we add those in moments that don't deviate people from following us, but they actually just add to the uniqueness of the song in the moment. So I would say that that's number 3, 80-20 rule. Number 4, engage the room. Number 4, engage the room. One time I went to Epcot, Disney World, right? And when I was entering in, we were heading over, if you've ever been there, heading over towards the test track area. And there was a group of drummers that came out, and they had these, it looked like trash cans, but of course it was just for show because it ended up being like these drum bins that they were gonna play. And there was 4 of them, and they lined up, and then one person would get the moment to kind of do like a little bit of a solo while the rest of the team would just play. Well, whenever that person's turn came, the line would be here, and then that person would step forward, and they would kind of move in the crowd, and they would start doing this. They would just kind of go like this before they would go back and they would start to play. To me, that was like the perfect mental example of how to engage a room, right? Engaging a room means that you intentionally do things that give them permission to do them and invite them to do it, right? So if I'm trying to bring the room to celebrate a moment or to clap rhythmically with us, I'm always trying to engage them. I'm trying to move towards them to let them know, hey, come on, let's do this. If I'm giving them room to sing a moment in the song, I might sing, and then I might go like this, or I might do this. I'm just engaging them to let them know like, hey, we're doing this together, we're participating in this together. The key is for you to engage. So as the worship leader, I think it's important for you to take initiative by engaging them. Oftentimes we're waiting for the room to be where we are, and to me that's really not the responsibility of leading worship. Leading worship means we are there to help them kind of join with us as we worship together. So I would say that's number 4, engage the room. And then number 5, very, very simple, the countenance. How your face looks during worship is so critical. If you have the opportunity to record your worship services, I would say go back a couple of days after you're done and just look at your face. The countenance is so important. Smiling, the power of a smile, the power of your eyes. I'll give you some real practical, okay? So this is kind of like peaceful eyes. I am restful and I feel good. This is more like focused eyes. It can be interpreted as angry eyes, okay? And then these are really deeply reflective eyes. I'm just giving you some examples just with the power of the eyes, but I think smiling and your countenance goes a long way. And sometimes we're singing these beautiful words of hope and love, and our face is just really intense and it's angry. And we're just kind of in this we're searching for something in our minds, in the recesses of this abstract place. And the words are just these peaceful words full of love, hope, and joy. So I think when we sing words, we gotta be mindful of what they're actually saying and try to make sure that the countenance, our face, our facial expressions are matching that. I've always said this with our team, but if you're saved, tell your face. Because sometimes it looks like on a musician's face or a singer's face, they're just really unhappy. I know that's not the case, but sometimes our face communicates something that doesn't match what we're actually saying, and I think those 2 things should be there. So those are my 5 tips. And this is a summary of some ideas. Share moments together with the room. I think that's really important as a worship leader. Your job is to unify the room so that the room is unified with thought and focus. I think that's the greatest responsibility of leading worship. And I think the last little bonus idea here is pastor people's journey. You might say, well, I'm not a pastor, I'm a worship leader, I'm a worship director. Pastoring means shepherding. It means that you care for the people you're leading. So I think pastoring people's journey is know that you have the responsibility and the joy and the privilege to lead people through an experience that reveals God to them through song. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things we get to do. So I hope these 5 things help you as you lead rooms of worship. And until next time, from my heart to yours.